On Divine Mercy weekend, 7 years ago, my grandson, who at the time was 2 years old, fell 15 feet out a window onto a concrete ground, and he was not hurt. No one could explain why he didn't get hurt. They kept him in the hospital 2 days to check and see if he broke anything, if he had internal injuries, because he should have hit a gas pipe that was sticking out of the house that he fell out of before he hit the cement, and he didn't. When he hit the cement, he should have been hurt, and he wasn't. He could have died. The next day was Divine Mercy Sunday, and then the next day was Divine Mercy Monday. My husband went to work where he'd been at that point for about 36 years. He'd been there, 34 years. And he drives for UPS. He got in his truck and he was coming up over a hill in Winfield where he works. There were some people on the highway, and he had to make a split-second decision, so he pulled his truck off the highway so he wouldn't hit the people. Instead, he hit a tree. He was going 70 miles an hour when he hit the tree. He should have died too, and he didn't. That weekend, God was very merciful and gracious to us. So on Divine Mercy weekend, I could have lost my grandson and my husband within a 2-day period, and I didn't, and they were both okay. But from that, UPS had a rule that if you did more than $4,000 worth of damage to your vehicle, you had to get fired. It doesn't matter why. So we had to go to Milwaukee to meet with the Teamsters and see if he'd get his job back or not. And while he was in his meeting, we had a brand new baby. She was so little because she was just 5 pounds when she was born. And she was only like a month old at this point. And she was still teeny tiny, and she was our number 8. And I thought, what are we going to do if my husband doesn't have a job? How are we going to survive? And I went to the Adoration Chapel, and John went to his meeting. And I was praying, and then out of the blue, for no reason, this idea pops in my head. And I said, God, how do I know that's you and not the devil just messing with me? And it wasn't 30 seconds later that my husband called and said, honey, I got my job back. And then I said, I know what we're supposed to do then. And I said, we have to go to the abortion clinic to celebrate. And he was like, why? And I said, just trust me. So he did. And at that point, I decided. I went into the clinic with my brand new baby, and I signed the register with my name and everything else. And I asked for a pregnancy test. And then I sat down in the waiting room with all the other girls who were waiting for abortions. And then we all started talking, and I started passing my baby around the waiting room. And God's creation spoke for itself. And in that first waiting room, I never got kicked out of the clinic. No one ever said anything to me. I waited my turn. I did the test. I wasn't pregnant, and I left. But when I left, 2 girls followed me out. And I made a promise to God that I would spend the time it took for him to get his job back, which was 3 months to be reinstated, traveling, going into every single abortion clinic across the country with my tiny baby, and talking to every girl I could while I was in the waiting room. And in one 3-month period, more than 100 girls followed me out of abortion clinics to pregnancy crisis centers. I never got thrown out of one clinic. I never got in trouble. And God went with me, I think, in every single place, because sometimes those places are very oppressive, especially places like the Planned Parenthood in Houston. There's a Planned Parenthood in Aurora, Illinois, where I had an amazing thing happen. Some of them have signs that say that you can't take your baby inside, or that children are not allowed. And that was the case in Aurora, Illinois. And she was going to deny me going in because they had door B and door A. And there was a girl sitting outside of door A with an ultrasound in her hand. And I looked at her ultrasound and I said, oh, your baby's about 10 weeks. And she said, yeah, how did you know? And I said, I've seen a few of those. And I sat down and I said, I have a problem. They won't let me in there, but I need to go get a pregnancy test. And I said a prayer to the Blessed Mother quietly, and then I said, all right. I said, would you hold my baby? So to a total stranger, I gave my little itty bitty baby because I knew that was what God wanted. And I turned around and I went into the other door, sat down, started filling out a paper next to another girl who said, why do they charge in this place? And I said, I bet there's a place right up the street that doesn't. Why don't we go there? So she got up and left with me. We went out to where my baby was, and the girl was crying. And I said, you don't want to be here. And she said, you're right. And she too followed me to the Pregnancy Crisis Center right up the street. And so I did that for 3 months.